In this video, I will be sharing my top 5 favorite Sonia G eye brushes, as well as the closest second favorites for each of my top 5 favorites that might better suit your different preferences or needs. I'm going to start off by saying that I do have most of the Sonia G eyeshadow brushes, including ones from her first release, which I have here. And because these are not offered by Sonia anymore, these are the blue Squirrel Bristle brushes. These are the 3 that I will be excluding from my top 5 selection, even though they would be up there otherwise, because I do really enjoy these, and I hope one day she is able to bring them back for us. So here are my top 5 favorite eye brushes from Sonia G. We have the Worker 3, the Builder Pro, the Blender Pro, the Builder 2, and the Smudger 2. These are the 5 that I reach for the most. I have traveled with just these 5, and these are the only 5 that I need to complete a full eye look, and I have been experimenting with all of my brushes to narrow it down to these 5. These are my tried and true ones. I've also washed and used these many times, and they've held up great, and I will be discussing each one in detail and in the order of how I would use them to complete an eye look. So let's go ahead and start with what I use as an all-over lid brush, and for me that is the Worker 3. This is made of Chikuhodo goat hair, and it's actually intended to be used as a blender brush, but you can also use it as an all-over lid shader brush, and I like that it is multi-purpose. So what's noteworthy about this brush is that the shape is similar to that of a shader brush, but it's more dense. As you can see, it's not very flat, and therefore it's quite sturdy, and this allows it to be multi-purpose. So you can also use it to build up color, to blend around the edges, in addition to laying color all over the lid. I will compare it to what I think is a very standard shader brush. So this here is the Chikuhodo. I don't know, it came in a set, but it is a very standard shader brush shape, and you can see they're similar in size and shape. And then when you turn it on the side, that's when you can see that the Sonia G one is much more densely packed. And as an alternative, if perhaps you want a bigger brush, which would be a bit better suited for someone with larger eyes, I would say I have medium size eyes, medium to small, and I do prefer slightly smaller brushes. But the alternative here is the Worker 2, and the Worker 2 is the exact same brush as the Worker 3. It's just that the Worker 3 is a little bit smaller, but you're going to get the same shape and multi-purpose benefit of this brush. The next brush is going to be one that I would use for more precise shadow placement, for instance on the outer V or building up the color. I have selected the Sonia G Builder Pro, and this one is dyed Chikuhodo goat hair. What's noteworthy for me about this brush is the shape, in that it has a more almond shape tip, and I looked through some Beautylish reviews, and the biggest criticism for this brush was that theirs did not have the pointed shape at the top. It is intended to have the shape, mine does have it, and I do think that is what makes this brush great and unique, because it makes it very easy to place eyeshadow in the outer V, perhaps near the inner part of the eye as well. And the closest one that I have that reminds me of this shape is the Syrah eyeshadow brush. I don't remember the exact name, so I'll make sure to have it linked in the description below. But you can see that they have this similar pointed almond shape near the top. I actually prefer the Sonia G one just because it is a little bit more dense, so it allows you to place pigment even stronger while still being incredibly soft. The Sonia G one is also much less expensive than the Seurat one, but then again, the Seurat one is a squirrel bristle type, so that's not a fair comparison. And the alternative for this precise placement brush, if you are not interested in trying this different shape that comes more to a point, would be the Builder 3. This brush is going to be a little bit larger. It's also more square box shape, but in terms of density and width, they are quite similar. So you can use these for a similar purpose. The next brush would be a blending brush, and I love blending brushes. I selected the Sonia G Builder Pro. This is one of my most used brushes. It is also dyed Chikuhodo goat, and please keep in mind that for blending brushes, the bundling differences might make, I mean, you're never going to have two brushes that are identical due to slight bundling differences, so do have an open mind about that. And mine comes to a very, very slight point near the top, which allows me to get precise in my crease and to blend colors more precisely. It's not super pointy, but it does have that taper point, which really allows me to get it in the crease and blend precisely. This one reminds me a lot of the Tom Ford 13. Again, keeping in mind that there would be some differences across different Tom Ford 13 brushes. I've heard people say theirs is more domed and tapered, but mine is actually has that very similar pointed tip. So for me, the Blender Pro is very similar to the Tom Ford 13. I wouldn't say it's an exact dupe, but it is the closest one that I have in my collection. And then as an alternative to the Blender Pro, if perhaps you do prefer the more tapered or dome shape brush, I would encourage you to look into the Crease 2, and the Crease 2 is going to be a tad bit bigger near the top as well, again due to the fact that it's more of a dome shape. And this one's also undyed goat hair. But you can't go wrong with either of these. I just prefer the Blender Pro because I do have smaller eyes and it allows me to get into the crease more precisely. Next in my eyeshadow application would be a brush for special shades. For instance, shimmers, metallics, glitters, eye toppers. And these are very unique brushes. I would go as far as saying that I haven't found other goat bristle brushes that function the same way as the two that I'm going to show you. So for me, my go-to is the Builder 2, and I use this for working with more difficult shades to pick up, shades that are likely to have more fallout. And this one is also Chikuhodo goat. It is extremely densely packed, but at the same time very soft. And I apologize that this one is dirty. I was doing some last minute testing before filming, but this is quite a large brush in terms of its width, so it can cover a large area. It's quite large actually, that sometimes I do wish I had a smaller version of it for when I need more precise application. Hopefully in the future Sonia will offer something like this, but in the meantime and as my alternative, if you want a smaller brush for this purpose of building up more metallic or glittery shades, you have two options. One would be the Builder Pro, which I already spoke about as in my prior section, but the one I actually use more is the Pencil 2. And this is intended to be a pencil brush, but because it's quite large for a pencil brush, I can use it for precise placement of those special shades. I will put them next to each other, although keep in mind the shapes are going to be different, but it is also densely packed. And I would say about half the width of the Builder 2. I'll give a quick demonstration of how these brushes work because I do think they are very, very unique. I have here the Anastasia Soft Glam eyeshadow palette, and this one has some shimmery metallic shades that can get quite crumbly. I'm going to use Pink Rose in this demo, which is the shade right here. I'll first give you a finger swatch so you can see what that looks like if you were to apply that with a finger. And I'll turn the lights down in a minute so you can see it better. And now I'm going to use the Builder Two. I'm going to tap it and drag it a little bit, and there you go. And then next I will use the Pencil 2. Okay, let me turn these lights down. Let's try. I don't know how well that's showing up, but my point here is that these two brushes apply the eyeshadow nearly as pigmented as using your finger, which is, I think, quite rare when you're using natural bristles, and I prefer to use brushes over my fingers. So just take my word for it if it's not showing up very well in the video. These are really, really good for using eyeshadows that can be a little bit more tricky. And then the last section of my favorite brushes is going to be for a lash smudger or a pencil brush. And for this part, I have selected the Smudger Two. Get this out of the way. And this is my go-to, the one I use the most, and the first one I would replace immediately if I needed to. That is how much I enjoy using this brush. And do keep in mind that I like to use shadow liner a lot over perhaps a liquid liner. So that'll be a personal preference as to whether or not you need a pencil smudger brush. But this one I would say is a standard size for a smudger brush. I'm gonna put it next to the Goss 08, mostly because it's tiny, and the Sonia G one is not big by any means. It's very standard size, but I will do a quick demo using the Goss 2 to show you the different sizes and the lines they make. So the Sonia Smudger one is noteworthy because it comes to a very precise tip. So even though its width is quite large, it really comes to a very small tip, which allows you to make very strong pigmented lines around the lash line while still being very soft. And I prefer this over a pencil brush because I find that I can work more quickly with a smudger brush, so it allows me to do that step in my makeup routine faster. However, the alternative, if you do prefer a pencil brush shape, for me, my recommendation would be the Pencil 1, which is going to give you a similar line size as the Smudger 2, but you will have the benefit of the classic pencil brush. And I will show you, similar to what I did in the last one, I'll show you quickly a quick demo with an eyeshadow. So I'm going to take this same palette, this dark brown. I'll start with the Smudger 1. So very gently tap it in, and there you go. I'll give you the Pencil 1. And then the Goss 1. So the pencil and the Goss 1 will give you a thinner line and very, very similar, despite the Goss 1 being a tiny brush. And I'm going to do the Smudger 2 again because I don't think I had the right angle. You can definitely get a very precise line with the Smudger 2. To conclude, these are my favorite Sonia G eyeshadow brushes, and I think if you just had these brushes or close alternatives to it, you could complete virtually any eye look. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm hoping that my next video will be the new Sonia G Sky Eye set. I'm hoping to be able to purchase it before it sells out, so please make sure to subscribe so you can be notified of my next video. Thank you.